Asymmetrical Haircuts, Justice Update with Janet Anderson and Stephanie van den Berg in partnership with justiceinfo.net.
Hi, Janet.
Hi, Steph.
We thought we'd be doing a roundup of all the ins and outs of the big meetings just held in The Hague last week, the Assembly of State Parties of the ICC, and maybe some on the climate change at the ICJ.
Well, yeah, we are going to do that, but no, let's just keep it focused for the moment to make sure we don't make too long a podcast for everybody. But meanwhile, my God, Syria.
Yeah, this was the big news over the weekend. I've been kind of glued to the news channels. Former President Bashar al-Assad has fled. There are new rulers in Damascus, and most extraordinary footage of prisons and torture chambers being opened. We saw this Sednaya prison, the complex known as the human slaughterhouse, which is just, chills running down my spine. According to Amnesty International, about 20,000 prisoners were held at Sednaya and many were tortured. And we saw this extraordinary images that were all over the social media of these people opening up the prison cells and finding like small children or a little boy in a prison cell, and also these videos of men running down the street who had just been liberated out of the prison and had to ask what the hell was going on because they just spent 10 years in prison and they had no idea.
Yeah, but how does it all actually fit, though, into our world? Well, my goodness, the connections are so multifarious, myriad. I don't know how to put it. Let's just pick up one thread. There's the IIIM, which is the institution, mechanism, set up based in Geneva, which has been investigating atrocity crimes in Syria and documenting them. And they issued a statement in which they say, quote, "We can help Syrian, domestic and international courts and tribunals in the future to adjudicate events and contribute to a collective understanding of the past and an indisputable recounting of the truth," unquote. Basically, they're calling on people to please carry on documenting.
Yeah, and linked to the IIIM, there's also this cases going on in domestic European courts. The Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, France have been kind of working their way through Syrian crimes, like the torture trial in Koblenz that we covered. There are crimes against humanity trials in the Netherlands, and now there will be maybe new people fleeing Syria and a need for new kinds of trials for Assad's henchmen.
Yeah, and the reason why that's connected to the IIIM is that they're one of the channels that sends information off to those domestic courts. You mentioned France, and there's already a case against former President Bashar al-Assad. That case looked like it was going quite well. It's about chemical weapons use allegations. There was a fear, though, that might stumble because of head of state immunity, but that doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah, I have read this script, but I just realized that indeed now doesn't apply anymore. But the latest reports are that he's in Russia, who don't like to hand over people to any kind of tribunal or court. So maybe that's still not really going to happen. Another case that becomes a little more complicated is the ICJ torture case against Syria that the Netherlands and Canada have started, and that is because they are accusing the Syrian state of violating the UN Torture Convention. And will they continue this case and kind of try to hold the new government responsible for the old regime? And we also have the efforts of Syrians to set up a chemical weapons tribunal. Will that get an impulse, or will that now that maybe more ways of accountability are opening up, will that dampen the enthusiasm for the international community to help with setting up such a tribunal? It's hard to say.
Just as we're talking, I also remembered there's a new body, isn't there, that was set up in Geneva, also looking into enforced disappearance in Syria. So I wonder what's going to happen there. Then we also have I saw quite a lot of people starting to say, whoa, maybe Syria will join the International Criminal Court, maybe sign a statement referring what has happened to the International Criminal Court. And I just thought, really? I think that's quite unlikely. Maybe a group of states would possibly refer Syria to the court. That's what the debate was around that I saw at the Assembly of States Parties, which we'll talk about again later. But in every case, I think this feels a bit moot. I just can't see why new authorities would be making joining the ICC a priority. it'll be tough enough just getting everything else going in Syria. And I can't see states in general making a referral for past crimes a big priority.
Well, we're going to have to see, and during 2025, we'll get a hold of some specific Syrian justice actors and ask them, what now, where do we go to next, and what type of domestic accountability and international accountability they are looking for, or that they think is even feasible.
Yeah, so big shout out to anybody listening. Please get in touch with us if you want to tell us what you think should be going on in Syria right now, if you are Syrian.
So now let's go back to what already seems a bit like ancient history. We had a really lovely week in The Hague hanging out at the ICC's annual meeting.
Well, I know that I did, but I think you were actually in two places at once, because you were also down the road covering the International Court of Justice Climate Advisory Opinion hearings. I, on the other hand, stuck in my main spot, and I managed to give away a very large number of special mugs with special sort of purple wraparound on them, which you could see in lots of different places. Try and put a bit of a gallery under this post on our main website for everyone to see. So I had enough time, I think, to follow some of the debates and some of the discussions going on in the hall. I went to quite a lot of side events, and also I was lurking in the corridors to see what people were talking about.
So what kind of thing would you like to focus on from the ASP? Because as you said, I've been trying to do 2 and also possibly 3 things at once at many of the days that I was at the ICC.
Well, what I thought was much of the kind of ideas that I picked up there, I think will just feed into the podcast over the next year. But in terms of the actual ASP, for me, the important thing right at the end will be to say what they agreed on the budget. Then I thought also important is to reflect on what they were talking about, the threats against the court that we can expand upon a bit. And then also there's been the confirmation of an external investigation into alleged sexual harassment by the prosecutor. Let's just start with the sanctions issue. Here's the judge, Tomoko Akane, who's the president of the court. She's from Japan, and this is what she had to say at the opening.
The court has been subjected to attacks seeking to undermine its legitimacy and ability to administer justice and realize international law and fundamental rights by coercive measures, threats, pressure, and acts of sabotage. Several elected officials are being severely threatened and are subjected to arrest warrants from a permanent member of the UN Security Council, merely for having faithfully and diligently carried out their judicial mandate per the statutory framework and international law. 2 other warrants have been newly issued, as in the presidency's recent public statement. The court is being threatened with draconian economic sanction from institutions of another permanent member of the Security Council, as if it was a terrorist organization.
That's a pretty strong presentation of the threats that the court is under, and she went further and even outlined what the consequences for the institutions would be if the threat succeeded.
I have mentioned the existential threat of sanctions. Let me be honest. There isn't such a thing as selective sanctions or coercive measures. If the court collapses, this will inevitably imply the collapse of all situations and cases. Witnesses who the court vowed to protect will be abandoned. Field offices will no longer be maintained. Victims across situations will be left without remedies or hope. Elected and non-elected officials, your own citizens, and their families will endure tremendous consequences.
And on that first day of the ASP, when everybody made their kind of introductory statements, we also got the official line on the allegations of sexual misconduct against Karim Khan, the prosecutor. And here is the Finnish president of the ASP, Päivi Kauko-Ranta, explaining the line.
On 24 October 24, I issued a statement concerning public reports regarding alleged misconduct by the prosecutor towards a member of his office. And subsequently, on 28 October, the prosecutor requested the head of IOM to open an immediate investigation under the umbrella of the IOM into misconduct allegations and surrounding circumstances relating to the official processes of the court and what appears to be disinformation. And on 6 November, the Bureau was briefed by the head of IOM on the IOM's assessment on the request and its reasons for closing the investigation. The Bureau agreed that the President should explore possibilities for an external investigation of the allegations in consultation with the Vice Presidents and keep the Bureau informed. And on 11th November, I issued a further public statement indicating that I'm seeking, on behalf of the Assembly Presidency, an external investigation into the matters related to the alleged misconduct by the prosecutor. An external investigation is being pursued in order to ensure a fully independent, impartial and fair process in conformity with the legal framework of the ICC and the IOM and following a victim-centered approach. And I must insist on due respect for the privacy and the rights of all involved parties, as well as the confidentiality of the investigations. Further information can only be shared once the investigation has been concluded.
This is a story that you've been covering yourself, Stefan, with your Reuters hat on. Is there anything more that you want to say on what, I don't know, about how you've been covering it, or just where we are now? Or do you think, that's it? We just wait now until the investigation is made public?
I think it's very important for the court to have a kind of speedy outcome of this investigation. And I know from sources that they're really trying to do that. But it's very unclear to me how much will be known officially and what they will kind of make public. And I know they want kind of quiet around it. But on the other hand, we've seen so far a kind of bungling of the court in handling this. When these allegations first surfaced, the internal commission supposedly dealing with these allegations didn't act any further. Then they couldn't have the investigation in-house because the person leading the IOM, the in-house investigative mechanism that would look into these was like a former employee of the OTP. So I think that while I understand that this is all very delicate and you have to not give, you have to let people be able to tell their story and have somebody look at it, I also think that part of it should be made public so that we can see that how the processes work. And we have no idea how this process works or how it's going to go. And that I think also creates uncertainty and doesn't show a lot of transparency, doesn't really make me very confident that the court is dealing with this in a very clear way.
I think the only thing that I would add is that it was definitely a point of discussion on the sidelines with quite a lot of people. So it's something that the court can't kind of push under the carpet at this point. And there does need to be some clarity that emerges, and they do need to make sure that it's sufficient for everybody to feel that there has been a proper investigation into it.
Yeah, and I think they have the problem of the added pressure that now kind of forces that are not very friendly to the court to begin with are kind of running with this story and making it bigger. And so everybody is in this space where not a lot of is clear, and everybody's using it for their own purposes. And that also gives, if you don't say anything, then you leave a lot of space for people to fill up this stuff. And people are interested. This was a bit the talk of the town of the ASP, and it was very weird to walk into the ASP and have people that would normally talk to me from the OTP kind of dive between pillars and not wanting to be necessarily seen to be talking to journalists because everybody thought that we would only talk about one thing, which of course, I wouldn't be a very good journalist if I would meet secret sources that would tell me stuff about the OTP in plain sight in the middle of the ASP meeting. But anyway.
I think everybody was watching you, Steph, to see exactly who you were talking to. And luckily for me, you were talking to me quite a lot of the time.
You are my secret source. This is a secret.
Oh, well, I'm definitely not the secret source. I'm definitely not a source at all on this. But let's wrap up this particular pod with a note now about the budget. This is, in fact, I think, the purpose of the ASP every year. It is an interesting way to assess the relationship between the states who fund it and the officials of the court, to try and look at how much money is coming in and whether people are comfortable with the direction that the court is going. The court prepares a budget kind of 6 months before and then starts negotiating about it. They'd asked for more than 10% increase on last year. And the state's own budget committee then goes through with a fine tooth comb and cuts that down usually, and did again, of course, this year, but also agreed that maybe somewhere in the 8% region would be a rational increase. But then after really stiff negotiations, which I understood got quite heated at times and quite complicated, the court, in fact, only got over 4% this year. And that was basically a vote of a lack of confidence, I would say.
Yeah, I think as well, because that's almost not even covering kind of inflation in the Netherlands at this point that you're looking at. I think what I heard is they're also really looking at the lack of courtroom activity. There are lots of warrants, but not a lot of people in Scheveningen in the prison waiting to go on trial. This week we're looking at the closing arguments in 2 trials. There's the Ali Kushaib, the first Darfur trial of an alleged Janjaweed leader, which is wrapping up. And we also have closing arguments in the Yekatom and Gaissana trial, which are 2 alleged leaders of Christian anti-Balaka militias in the Central African Republic who are on trial for attacking Muslim civilians. Now you have one other trial on the Central African Republic ongoing, and there is this hearing where of confirmation of charges of Kony that deals with Uganda, but that's it. There's kind of nothing in the pipeline. And where else can there go? There are arrest warrants, but there's Putin and there's Netanyahu and all that, but you're not going to get them. There's a recent arrest warrant for the Myanmar military leader who never goes anywhere, so that's not looking very good. There were some uplifting reports that there were some arrests maybe done in Libya, but I also understand that the chance of those people being actually handed over to the ICC doesn't seem like the Libyan authorities are too keen on that. So there's really, I don't know where they're going to get the bodies to have trials, because it doesn't look like they have any at this point. So we're looking at kind of, you still have appeals in the cases that are now have the closing arguments, but you're looking at empty courtrooms pretty soon.
We do understand that there are secret arrest warrants as well, so you never know. I mean, tomorrow, the next day, somebody might turn up who's been arrested secretly in some situation, so we can always have to eat our own words. But, we'll carry on monitoring the court. We'll carry on seeing what goes on in The Hague. And I think in particular, our focus next year will be on the sanctions that threaten the court coming out of the United States as President Trump becomes inaugurated in January. And we'll let you know what happens.
This was Asymmetrical Haircuts, your international justice podcast. Created and presented by Janet Anderson and Stephanie Vandenberg. This episode was created in partnership with justiceinfo.net, an independent site covering justice efforts for mass violence, and with the Hague Humanity Hub. Music is by autonautics.com. You can find show notes and everything about the podcast on asymmetricalhaircuts.com. This show is available on every major podcast service, so please subscribe, give us a rating, and spread the word.
Hi, it's us again.
Just to say that if you enjoyed the interview and you want to support our work, head on over to patreon.com and buy us a coffee there.
That way, you also get to hear the extra War Criminals Book Club podcast that we do every month.
And twice a year, we show you a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes. You can meet the team and ask what subjects you would like us to cover.
And there's a monthly newsletter.
All for just the price of a cup of coffee and a bit of cake every month.
And you get the deep appreciation from our team for your support.
Thank you very much.
Always bloody well getting the last word.
Always.